Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
On today's show, a man in Perth went to a school event in blackface makeup and he won a prize. I'll give you more on that one. Plus, the cybersecurity sector in Australia is short of workers, and I mean really short. The Bondi Junction attack has prompted a mental health funding boost in New South Wales, and Melbourne crime queen Judy Moran has enlisted another high-profile underworld figure to get her out of jail. I'll leave you today with some bad news about the nation's baby making. In our top story today, an embarrassing blackface incident at a Perth primary school.
All right, the key elements for a successful sled team are a steady driver and 3 strong runners to push off down the ice. Ice! Ice! Then, it's kind of a winter sport, you know. You mean winter as in ice, baby? You mean winter as in igloos and Eskimos and penguins and ice? Possibly. See you.
Cool Runnings, what a classic movie. Well, a man in Perth was such a big fan of the film, it inspired him to dress up as one of the Jamaican bobsled team at a primary school P&C fundraiser, complete with blackface makeup. Here to unpack this incredibly stupid decision is education reporter Beth Hyatt. Okay, Beth, what exactly happened here?
Well, as I understand it, this North Woodvale Primary School held a fundraiser Saturday a week ago, and the theme was wear your favourite 90s outfit. So this man decided to come as someone from the film, Cool Runnings, and he made a full effort. He wore the full bodysuit and the blackface. Unfortunately, that upset a few people on the night.
Understandably.
And the school had nothing to do with it, but they were forced to make some sort of apology. As you would have seen, the committee for the night came out and apologised and said this was incredibly naive of us. We didn't understand the complex history of blackface.
I am amazed, firstly, that anybody would actually, with a straight face, say that they don't understand. I think it's pretty established by now that the history of blackface is not so complex. It's just, inappropriate, I think, is the most diplomatic word I could use to describe it. And it wasn't just that this fellow has rocked up in blackface. He was also given the award for Best Dressed.
I think that's the other thing that upset people, that they couldn't understand that this would be seen as something to celebrate. Yes, he was named Best Dressed Male on the night for his costume.
Wow. P&C committees sometimes can be a bit of a law unto themselves. So what has the WA Education Department had to say about all of this?
The Director-General actually came out quite strongly. They said the department took its responsibility very seriously to be an inclusive organisation for everyone. And Lisa Rogers, she's the Chief Executive, she said this is both disappointing and unacceptable. She did make the point it was an after-hours off-site parent event and there were no staff there, but she noted that it clearly did not reflect on the school's culture and values or that of the community. And she also said that as soon as the matter was brought to the attention of the principal, he immediately contacted the president of the P&C Association to raise his concerns and express his disappointment.
Yeah, rightly so. I think maybe some sensitivity training might be needed for the members of the P&C at that Woodvale Primary School. It must be something in the water over there in WA, because I remember a few years ago there was a book week and a kid went along in blackface as the West Coast Eagles player Nick Natanui. Do you remember that?
I do. I wrote about it at the time in 2016. Yes, his mother she noted on Facebook she was very proud that he also won a prize in the Book Week parade for the costume.
Yeah, just don't. Education reporter Beth Hyatt, thanks so much for sharing this story on the Nightly 5.
You're welcome.
Well, booking websites are the latest target of cyber criminals. Ticketek falling victim and telling customers their information has been stolen only days after a similar attack on Ticketmaster.
Australia's cyber security sector faces a looming shortfall of workers as the nation grapples with an unprecedented number of high-profile data hacks. The industry warning comes after a third-party vendor used by Ticketek was hacked, with the event ticketing company disclosing the breach of personal information, including names, dates of births and emails, to customers over the weekend. AusCyber Chief Executive Officer Chris Kirk joins me now. Chris, how many workers do you think we're short in the cybersecurity sector?
Unfortunately, it's quite a staggering number, and with the report we've recently put out put the number of dedicated roles that the cyber industry is going to need in Australia to keep up at around 85,000 by 2030. To put that number in perspective, we're looking at a 66% increase in roles, or almost 5,000 new people into the industry every year.
That is a staggering number. And it initially makes me think, like, what are all these people doing? What do we need them to be doing? Can you give us an idea of what workers in this sector actually do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think a real opportunity for the cyber industry to do better in terms of providing colour and clarity as to what is it actually like to work in the cyber industry. Now, many people would be surprised to know that actually only 20% of the jobs that are currently open in the cyber industry require technical expertise, and quite a significant number are actually in what we call supporting roles. So roles where there may be some level of industry knowledge that's required around cyber, but you're very much in a support capacity. Of the technical roles, there's things like being a cyber analyst or a security analyst, and there's defined kind of career paths around those things. But also a real opportunity, I think, for more Australians to think about cyber as a career.
And so why do you think we are running short of them? Is it an image issue with the sector? Is it the idea that you have to have all of this kind of like technical knowledge that to some people might be like speaking another language?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there is a number of reasons why Australia, unfortunately, is falling behind our global counterparts when it comes to what's been quite apparent as a real skills shortage in the cyberspace. I think it starts with education, right down to the primary and also at the tertiary level. And there's a real opportunity, I think, for our kids in schools to actually understand the role of cybersecurity, the role of digital safety, and actually think about industries like cyber as a valid career path. There's also, a growing need, and there's some great work that AusCyber's put out around helping people actually understand what are the steps to take in the industry. Like, what do I study? Where can I get started? What does a salary look like? And so there's really a job to be done in terms of demystifying cyber, helping explain why it matters, and helping explain why it's actually a fantastic industry to work in for so many Australians.
Yeah, and as someone who works in legacy media, I often think about what career paths will still exist, 5, 10, 15 years from now. You'd have to say that cybersecurity probably is one of those career paths.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things, particularly for young people today, is to really not just think about what they want to do in the future, but make sure that industry is still going to be around and relevant. And the one thing that is really clear is that our economy and every industry is becoming more and more digitized, and with that presents a significant need to make sure that all of our digital assets, our websites, our systems, our platforms that Australia relies on every day are protected and secure. So we are seeing a massive growth and opportunity for Australians to engage in the cyber industry. And unfortunately, we're also seeing the downside and the threats and the attacks that happen almost every day now as well, as a result of what is becoming a really, really critical industry for Australia to quickly upskill around and make sure we're doing right as a nation.
In other sectors, we see what happens when there's a shortfall. Like if it's frontline health staff, we see the ambulance ramping as a result. If it's the hospitality industry, maybe you have to wait a bit longer for your coffee or your dinner. In the cyber security sector, what happens if we don't meet this worker shortfall?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it can be less obvious or less causal to know. There's not enough doctors, so I can't get into the doctor. Sometimes it's difficult to really correlate. What is the impact here? I think ultimately, if we have a look at what's happening right now across Australia, in the report AusCyber recently put out, we pointed to one attack happening every 6 minutes on an Australian business, and the cost, depending on the size of the business, can be in the order of about $70,000. And so for many businesses, that's an end of business moment. That is something that just means, we unfortunately can't proceed. So massive impact on the economy. And for a sector like cybersecurity, it's not just about making sure that we're protected. It's also, if I look at the growth of the sector in the last year, a massive economic opportunity for Australians. And, a big part of, I'm sure, what many Australians think about is, from a career perspective, what are going to be the growth sectors? And increasingly, where is our economy going to move to from digging up rocks and, mining to what I would call more sustainable technology-enabled economies. And cyber is absolutely one of those.
Yeah, it does sound like it. And so, Chris, give us a quick heads up on what people can do. If they're listening to this and they go, yep, this sounds like something for me, or maybe I know someone, or maybe my child could be perfect for this, how can they get started?
Yeah, it's really simple. Jump on the AusCyber website. We've got a great visual tool where you can actually explore different career pathways. You can see, what are the jobs that are available, what do they pay, how many of them, or, what are the study pathways. I would encourage people to do some research and kind of understand or be reassured that there's a job in cyber for everyone. You do not have to have technical skills. You can either learn them on the job or you can take up formal kind of training pathways. But ultimately, it's a growing industry with so much opportunity.
Yeah, and you'll be doing the nation a favour as well. AusCyber Chief Executive Officer Chris Kirk, thanks for sharing this intel on the Nightly Five.
Thank you so much.
Melbourne gangland matriarch Judy Moran has enlisted the help of a prominent underworld figure as she launches a desperate bid for freedom.
Melbourne crime queen Judy Moran is pleading to be let out of prison and has enlisted the help of underworld figure Mick Gatto to aid her cause, serving a minimum 21 years for the murder of her brother-in-law, Seaman Tuppence Moran. Judy is bedridden at the maximum security Dame Phyllis Frost Centre, according to the Herald Sun. Miss Moran is now reportedly lodging a petition for mercy, asking to be released from prison on the grounds of poor health. Gatto, who was cleared of murdering hitman Andrew Venyman in 2004, confirmed to the Herald Sun that Moran had contacted him and that he was helping her with the application, reaching out to lawyers on her behalf and even funding it a bit. You can find more on this story at thenightly.com.au.
Disturbing twist in the Bondi attack, with claims Joel Couchy stalked other shopping centres before deciding to embark on a stabbing spree at Bondi Junction.
Cracks in the New South Wales mental health system became painfully obvious in April after 40-year-old Queensland man Joel Couchy went on a stabbing rampage through the Bondi Junction Westfield shopping centre. 6 people were killed and more than a dozen injured, including a 9-month-old baby in the attack. He was known to Queensland authorities because of his mental health problems, which police said had declined in recent years. Couchy was last recorded by Queensland Health for receiving treatment for his mental health in 2012, when he started seeing a private psychiatrist. Now, in the wake of the Bondi Junction attack, the Minns government today committed $111 million to boost mental health care in New South Wales. Community mental health teams will receive funding for an additional 35 staff, allowing for better case management and extended hours to provide outreach, including in regional areas. Patients will be better connected to services through a front door model aimed at providing quicker care amid record high emergency department attendances. An extra $18 million has been allocated to a coronial inquiry into the massacre, with a focus on the adequacy of mental health care in the state. People with persistent mental illness and complex care needs will have support from 25 additional staff, providing alternatives to long-term hospital care under a $40 million program over 4 years. And people needing mental health support will be able to access assessment advice from specialist clinicians and be connected to relevant services, with $39 million over 4 years, which is aimed at keeping people out of emergency departments. Mental health brought more than 124,000 people to New South Wales EDs last year, and about a quarter could have received support from other primary care settings. Now, if you're struggling at the moment, reach out to Lifeline on 131114 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 4636.
Let's put a bun in your oven.
I must be crazy to be doing this.
You may be crazy, but you're also pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
If you thought Arnold Schwarzenegger having a baby in the movie Junior was unbelievable, the chances of young Australians having kids are pretty slim too. Recent research shows more than half of 18 to 34-year-olds in Australia are delaying starting a family, and it's all about the cos he lives. The data, compiled by political research organisation Redbridge Group, came from a survey of 2,000 Australians, and it shows a significant group of young people are delaying life decisions that previous generations were taking for granted. The country's birth rate rate is currently at 1.6, which is below the replacement rate level of 2.1 needed to keep population growth steady. And the government has been grappling with how to manage the dwindling population, looking at cheaper childcare and improved parental leave. The Redbridge research also shows younger Australians are putting off other major life decisions such as receiving medical treatment and getting married due to cost of living. Over half of 18 to 34-year-olds delayed medical treatment for a financial reason, and just under half had delayed getting married. Nearly 70% of that same age bracket have also delayed buying a home for the same reason. And that, folks, is today's show. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join me tomorrow on The Nightly 5.
The Nightly 5 podcast is brought to you by Seven West Media. For all these stories and more, head to thenightly.com.au, helping you get in front of tomorrow.